Okay. All right. Well, I'm so glad all of you are here with us today. If you were here 2 weeks ago, welcome back. If you weren't, then we are glad you're here today. I am going to be sharing my screen today. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my computer. And if you have your computer, I encourage you to go ahead and log into D2L, into a course that you would like to experiment with today. And again, the link that I shared is the entire document with all of the screenshots for today. So don't feel like if you miss something that we're talking about, you're going to be lost. You can always go back to this document later. Okay. And I'm going to go into a course that doesn't have any agents in it yet so that we can create them together. And then we'll get started. And of course, I said that. Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Can everybody see the screen that I'm sharing? Let's see. I can't see you all, so I'm hoping that you can.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Can. Thank you. It's so hard when you start sharing your screen, then you can't see anything else. So I want to make sure that you can see it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do in setting up our intelligent agents, are there some things that we need to change in the global settings that we want to apply to any agent that we create after that? So the first thing that we're going to do is find the intelligent agent section of our course. And you're going to do that by going to edit course. And in the screenshots, you'll see an example of a nav bar. I know your nav bar may look a little bit different. So navigate according to your nav bar to wherever your edit course section is. And then the intelligent agent section is part of the communication suite of tools. So on my edit course section, that's the second from the bottom section. And intelligent agents is one of the 4 options there. So you can click that as well. And that is going to take us to the main intelligent agent page. And if you have not created an agent before, your list is going to be blank, just like the list in this course. The first thing that we're going to want to do is click on our settings link, which is the tiny little wheel below your nav bar, but above the agent list. So click settings. And this is where we're going to tell D2L when it sends an agent on our behalf via D2L email, we want it to look like it's coming from us as the instructor of the course and not from the D2L help email address. So you can see that the default is for it to use the D2L help at mtsu.edu address. But I think your students will take the email more seriously if it looks like it's coming directly from you. So you can see in your screenshots, the next thing that you're going to do is click the radio button for set custom values for this course. And I want to make sure you understand this is going to set up the intelligent agents in this section of your course only. So if later you wanted to copy the intelligent agents from this section to a different section, you would also go back and change these settings in the other section or sections as well. It does not take very long, but it is something that you have to remember to do because those settings don't carry over from section to section. So you can type in whatever you would like your name to look like from D2L. So I'm going to type in the generic professor name and the box where name emails come from. And then the reply to address, this is going to actually be your D2L email. So my understanding from my research and talking to some other folks is that this does have to stay inside D2L. So it's not possible for you to enter your MTSU email address in this section and for those emails to appear correctly. So you're wanting to use your eLearn address instead of your MTSU address. So for most of you, it's probably first initial, last name, but you would want to just verify that in your class list of D2L. So I'm going to type in mine as an example. And so I'm just typing in lbryant@elearn.mtsu.edu. And as you'll see, there is a message right below that says these settings will affect all future emails sent by an agent. So we only need to do this one time in this section. And even though we haven't created any agents yet, these settings are going to apply to all of the agents that we create today and any future agents that you would create in this section. So it's smart to do this in the beginning, and then you don't have to think about it again for the entire semester. And then the last thing that I have pointed out in the screenshots and instructions is below here, we're going to take note of what time the system is telling us it's going to run the agents. So this says that the agents are going to run at about 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. And this is important because if you end up wanting to send an agent to students for, let's say, a missed deadline, and the agent runs today at 8 p.m., but your deadline isn't until 11:59 p.m., for example, the agent is going to notify any student who hasn't submitted an assignment by 8:00. So you could end up sending an agent email to students who think, well, I still have 4 hours, I still have time. And so that can be confusing for students. So I always try at the beginning of the semester to take note of this time. I have noticed it changes. Early on when I started using agents, it ran it in the morning at like 1:00 a.m. Sometimes I've seen it at 7:00 p.m. So it's just a good idea to take note of what time that is so that you'll know how to change your settings depending on how you want your agents to behave. And once you have entered your name and your email address, you can click Save. And now we have saved those settings for all of the agents that we're going to create today. To get started with our first agent, I've just included 3 examples in our instruction packet. The first one is a welcome to class email. And I'm sure all of you send a welcome email to your students already. So you might wonder why you would want to do it this way. Well, I learned how to do this from a D2L workshop that I attended, and they made a point that resonated with me that when you send an agent this way, you'll notice when we create the text of our email, I've said to students, hey, I noticed that you were able to enter our course or access our course. And so by using that kind of language, I noticed that you have arrived. It signals to your student that you're going to be a very present and engaged instructor. So they're going to think, oh, you're noticing when I'm here and when I'm not here. And so it's, of course, D2L who's noticing that, but it enables you to just show, it's a way to demonstrate that teaching and social presence that we talked about in our previous workshop. So that's the first agent we're going to start with today. So the first thing that you're going to do is click New under your agent list, and you'll be able to see here is our opening menu for how we're going to set up an agent. The very first thing that we'll do in the agent menu is give our agent a name. So you'll see in the instructions, what I typically use is welcome to class agent or email. And then after you've entered in the name, if yours is not already expanded, you can click the little arrow to the left of edit description, and that's going to open up your description box. And I like to enter a description here that's going to help me remember what this agent is supposed to do and maybe how it behaves. So for example, you might just say this agent looks for students who access the class the first time and sends them a welcome email. If you teach multiple sections, I think this can really be helpful because if you want to reuse that agent later, then it's easy to go back and find what you want. It's also helpful if you happen to be a lead designer and other people are going to use your course. If they want to use the agents, then it's going to be clear to them what the purpose of the agent is. So for today, we'll just say the agent looks for students who access the course for the first time. And then the third option in the first section is to decide, do you want the agent to be enabled or not enabled? The default, you can see as we've tried to create our first agent, is for it to be enabled. And that means the agent will actually run as we decide that we want it to later in the settings. If for some reason I didn't want the agent to run anymore, all I have to do is uncheck that box, and all of the settings below that we're going to do in a minute, they will stay, but it will just stop the agent from running, so that if you decided you wanted to enable the agent again, you would just check that box and you wouldn't have to do anything else. So for our purposes today, we're going to click Agent is enabled, and that lets us know as soon as we finish this, we would be able to use the agent in this section. Now, the next step is to determine what our criteria are going to be. And criteria in this instance means who are we looking for in the course? I typically use the users with specific roles option, and then I select student banner, because if I happen to have a librarian in my course or a teaching assistant or a co-instructor, I don't really need D2L to look for their behavior. I don't need to send them a welcome to class email if they're in the section. So I typically just use this option to limit it to student banner. You could certainly choose all users in the class list. That's just going to mean it's also going to be sent to other users that may not necessarily be your students. The next section is login activity. And you'll see for our purposes for this agent, we're not actually interested in this criteria. So I have left the box unchecked for take action when the login criteria is satisfied. What login criteria means is if the student is logging into MTSU's global D2L instance. So it means they have gone to elearn.mtsu.edu and logged in. And we don't need the agent to check for that for the welcome to class email. The next option is course activity. And that means, has the student logged into our course specifically? And that is exactly the kind of behavior that we're looking for now. So we're going to check the box, take action when the following course activity is satisfied. And we're going to say, the first option is if the student has not accessed the course. So you can see this would be helpful if you want to set an agent to look for students who are not logging into your course as the semester progresses. But in this case, we actually want to select the second radio button, which is the user has accessed the course. And we want to enter the number 1 in that box because we want D2L to scan every day for new students who have accessed our course the first time. And then the third option under activity is release conditions. And for this particular agent, we do not need to set any release conditions. The only criteria we're interested in is, did the student log into our course for the first time? So you can leave this section blank. The next set of criteria is titled Actions. And this is where we decide, now that the agent has identified potentially a student who has accessed our course for the first time, what do we want D2L to do on our behalf? So the first option is to choose repetition. Do you want the agent to send the student an email or send you an email? We'll talk about that. Only the first time the student meets the set of criteria. Or do you want the agent to email the student every time? For the purposes of a welcome to class email, one time should do it. So we only want the agent to send the student an email once. And therefore, we're going to keep this radio button selected. That's usually the default for take action only the first time the agent's criteria are satisfied. Then we get to choose, would we like D2L to send anyone an email as a result of this identification of a student? So if we want the agent to send an email, we select the box, send an email when the criteria are satisfied. And you can verify now that the settings that we edited at the very beginning are accurate for your course. So if you have changed the default email from D2L help to your name, you should now see your name and the name that email come from criteria here. And then in the reply to address, you should see your D2L email. If you still see the D2L help information, you can just go back to the settings and follow those screenshots and edit it there. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually craft the email that we want D2L to send on our behalf. This is one of those places that we can use some of the replacement strings that we talked about in last week's workshop. You may have used replacement strings in your course, but the replacement strings inside an agent are actually a little bit different. So I have shared with you in the instruction sheet, you're actually going to use an agent called initiating user in this case instead of first name. And so you'll use the little squiggly brackets and you'll choose initiating user with no spaces. And in fact, I want to just double check that that's correct before. Sometimes these agent replacement strings, there it is. So initiating user is the right one. And then you can decide, would you like to carbon copy yourself or blind copy yourself? I do like to blind copy myself on the agent emails because it's a nice notification for me to see what the students received. It also is just a notification for me for who was identified. We'll be able to see later in the steps what users are identified, but getting the emails to me is also just helpful. So I'm going to also include my own email address, eLearn, in the blind copy section. And again, it does need to be your D2L email address. It will not send a message outside D2L to your MTSU address. And then you will enter your subject. So I typically just make this a generic welcome to class. And now it's time for us to do our message. And so you can make this message could be anything you would like it to be. I think when we talked a few weeks ago about setting expectations and demonstrating teaching and social presence in your class, I like to use this opportunity to sort of give students an idea about what to expect, and especially things in my course that might be different in other courses that they're taking. For example, if my course is accelerated, I might want to take this opportunity to point out you're in an accelerated course. Sometimes, even though it's hard to believe, students miss that. And so letting them know the pace of this course is going to be quick, and the last day is going to be X can be really helpful. And then I also like to explain to them, I have my deadlines run. My week starts on Sunday and ends on Saturday. So their deadlines are going to be Saturdays at 11:59. It seems like a lot of faculty use a Sunday deadline. And so that might be different for my course. So this is a great place for me to introduce that concept to students. I also like to point out to students the primary way that I'm going to communicate with them in the course. So I don't actually use email as much as I use the discussion board. And I use a weekly agenda discussion to post updates and assignments for the week. So I'm going to use this opportunity to direct the students to that discussion board, setting the expectation for this is how I'll communicate with you later in the semester. And then finally, if there's just anything else that you want to tell them about how to get started in the course, I know most of your home pages will have that information or it'll be in your content, but this is another opportunity to reiterate, here's what your activities are going to be for the first few days of class. And so we won't take the time right now to write a super long email, but this is also another instance where you can use a replacement string. So again, normally you might be used to the replacement string first name, but inside an intelligent agent, we actually have to include that initiating user part of the replacement string in addition to first name. So it would look like this. Instead of just first name in brackets, it will be initiating user first name in brackets. And one thing that we talked about, again, in our previous workshop, is this is going to send, it's going to replace initiating user first name with whatever the student's first name is in Banner. So I happen to be a person who goes by my middle name, not my first name. So in D2L, if I'm a student, it's actually always going to say hello, Anna, instead of hello, Layne. And so that's one way that this doesn't always maybe work exactly the way that we would hope it will. But I remember Tara saying last workshop that students can send a message to ITD to ask for their preferred name to be changed only inside D2L. So that's one option for students. I have found, and this could also be another instance if a student uses a nickname, or for instance, if a student might be transitioning and they're changing from a male name to a female name or female to male name, and that's not actually in Banner, it might call them a name that's not their preferred name. So I just caution you that there are some cases in which using the replacement string may not be as preferred as it would be if we actually typed every student's name. For the most part, I think for a welcome email, students probably expect that our messaging is going to come to their official name as it appears in the class list. So I think for the welcome, it's actually okay, but you might want to think about how you use replacement strings for names in other parts of the course if that's a concern to you.
Hey, Layne, can you zoom in on your screen a little bit? Small.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
You're fine. Thank you.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. So now I hope you can see initiating user first name a little bit bigger. And you can see how typically we would just use first name, but now we're using the longer string. And then you could type in whatever you would like to use for your welcome to class. You can use your course name or course title. And then once you finish crafting your message, you have a few other options that you might be interested in. One is you can actually attach a file to your email. So if you're somebody who wants to attach a hard copy of your syllabus for students who would like to print it, you could do that. You could also record an audio or video note. So those are options as well. And if you already have recorded something that you're keeping in your files, you could choose existing and you could link those without having to upload them from your computer. You can also determine if you would like to use HTML format or plain text format for your messages. I tend to use HTML for the most part, but plain text, of course, might make sense depending on what you're sending to your students. And now that we've decided what we want our message to say, we will choose how often we want the agent to look for this. And so the scheduling tool will help us do that. If I want typically to look for students accessing my class for the first week, I want to use a schedule that begins the first day of class or the first day that I've opened my course. So if you tend to have your course open 5 days early, as is the default set by MTSU, you might actually want to start your schedule 5 days before the official first day of class. If you set a custom time, you could adjust that as well. The schedule is really flexible and customizable. So first we'll click the checkbox beside Use Schedule. And then to actually enter our days, we're going to choose Update Schedule. Here you can see we have the options to repeat this agent every day, every week, every month, or every year. In this instance, because we're only looking for students who are joining at the beginning of the semester, daily probably makes the most sense. And then I want this to actually repeat every single day because I know in the first week of class, students will sort of gradually be finding their way into my course. So I'm going to enter the number 1 under repeats every day. And then here is where I get to choose the stop and start dates for my agent. In this instance, I do want the agent to start and stop on a particular day. So if we think about this spring semester, when we started on Monday, January 25th, I might select that day. That's the first day I want the agent to start looking for students. And then I know that students might add a little bit late. So instead of using 1 week, maybe I decide I want to use 2 weeks. So I can stop it on the 6th. Or if I only wanted to look for the first week, I could go back and change that to January 31st. Either way, I can choose my date. And then when I click Update, you'll see D2L is telling me this is the schedule that I've selected. I want the agent to look every day, starting Monday, January 25th, and then through Saturday, February 6th. And then I'm going to click Save and Close. And everything that we've done from the time we entered a title for our agent to running the schedule, one Save and Close is going to save all of those settings. And now you can see there was a small pop-up that said created successfully. And now in our menu here, you can see we finally have one agent that's showing. So you can see the title of the agent and you can see the description. In the results of last run field, it's blank because our agent has not run for the first time. And the same for last run date and next run date. But there is a way to test this agent to see how it is going to behave. This is going to look a little bit strange because I'm in a development shell and there's not going to be any users here, but we're going to try a practice run anyway. In your course, if you're using a course that has students, this could look a little different. To do a practice run, you'll click the small down arrow caret and choose practice run from the list of options. D2L is going to send a pop-up that says, would you like to try a practice run? And when you click run, you're going to get a confirmation that it did execute and the day and time that it actually sent the practice run. You'll notice this note says processing time varies based on server load and the priority of other scheduled agents. I will say in my experience, when I've done practice runs, they're very, very fast. So typically it only takes a minute for that agent to run and to get the notification. When we click done, our page is going to refresh and you'll notice that we now have a little orange dot notifying us that we have a new message in email. And when I click that notification, you're going to see that D2L Help did complete the agent welcome to class, and it will show me how long ago that happened. And then now, if we look in the bottom, the results of the last run, it identified no new students who had accessed this course for the first time. And it tells me it ran just now. If this was an agent that you had established before, or it's an agent that you used at the beginning of the semester and now it's the end, you'll actually see a date and time stamp here. And if this is an agent that's still running, you'll see the next run date in this column as well. So if we ran this agent on Monday, January 25th, and then it's still going to run tomorrow, we would see January 26th in the next run date. So you get a lot of information here. And this link, if you didn't want to blind copy or carbon copy yourself on your agent emails, you could click this link that says 0 users identified. And if it had found users, you will actually see their names listed here. So it is possible to tell who the agent identified without sending an email to yourself. I find that the practice run is pretty helpful just for me to see, okay, did this agent work how I think it's going to? For the most part, it might not actually identify any users in your course, depending on what it is. For something like welcome to class, if you're setting this up before students are coming to class, the practice run's probably not going to tell you a lot. But things like low quiz grade, if you actually wanted to use that agent and you're creating it after the semester began, you could identify some students in your practice run. But this just, I think, helps me get familiar with, okay, I can kind of understand how an agent's going to operate in a course once I create it. I'm going to pause there for a minute. I know this is a lot to take in, and so I just wanted to see, after doing one agent, does anybody have any questions? All right, if we're good, we'll go to the next one. I tried to choose 3 different kinds of agents that have different kinds of criteria. So the next one is for a student who misses a discussion. I realize a lot of people may not have required discussion or may not use the same kind of criteria that I use for discussions, but at least it would be something that you'll see how the agent behavior is set up. You could see how you might apply the same kind of settings to a different kind of agent. So again, we're going to navigate back to our Intelligent Agent homepage. And to create a new agent, we're going to click New again. And this time, I'm going to title this agent Missed Discussion. And I'm going to call it First 3 Days. because in my particular course, I want students to post their original response to the question in the first 3 days of class. And then again, for the description, I might say, this agent sends a message.
Hey, Layne, share your screen.
Oh, well, thank you. That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
It's all good.
I'm typing away like you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so again, in the agent name, I'm typing Miss Discussion first 3 days. And then in the description, I'm going to say that the agent is sending a message to students who do not post in the first 3 days of the discussion period. And then I am again checking the box for agent is enabled because I want to make sure that when I'm finished with this agent, it will run. You can see again, the default criteria is for the agent to scan all users who show up on the class list, but I'm going to change that to only students banner because I, again, don't want to send that to co-teachers or librarians or teaching assistants. Then under login activity, again, we don't need to be concerned about login activity because I'm not interested in knowing if the students are logging into elearn@mtsu.edu. And this time, I'm also not interested in course activity because I'm not looking to see if the student has accessed the course. I'm actually looking to see how they are engaging or not engaging with a particular learning activity. So the section we're going to use is release conditions. If you happen to have created agents in the past and have some release conditions, you might be able to just attach existing. But for today's workshop, we're just going to start from scratch and we're going to click the Create and Attach button. Because we're looking for a discussion, I'm actually going to scroll down and find discussions in this long list of conditions. While we're here, I just want to point out all of the different ways that you can use agents. So you can see there's options for drop boxes. Did a student submit? Did a student not submit? Did they earn a particular score? Are they earning awards that you're setting up? Are they completing your checklist or are they not completing your checklist? You can see different kinds of group enrollment. Competencies, if you've set up competencies using the D2L competency tool, you can check for those. You can look to see if students are visiting your course content topics or not visiting the course content topics. I'm going to skip past discussions so you can see the others. There's also grades and then quizzes and surveys. So for all of the D2L learning tools, there is the possibility to use an agent to scan for student activity with those. Again, this time we're looking for discussions. So I could either look for students who have posted in a topic. I can look to see how they're scoring on maybe my discussion rubric. But in this case, I'm actually wanting D2L to look for any students who have not posted on a particular topic. So that's the option I'm going to select. And then under condition details, you can see no discussions available because I'm in a development shell. So what I'm going to do is hop right on over real quickly to a course that will have agents, and then you'll be able to see a little bit better what that will look like in a course that actually has content. Okay, so let's go back. And we're going to say, I'm just going to do quick things here since we already did this. We've already chosen the kind of user that we want as a student. And now we're in our release conditions. So if you select no post authored in topic, if you're in a course that does already have content built, you will now be able to use this drop-down menu to select which discussion you want to monitor. You can, in this instance, monitor all discussions. You can monitor one discussion, or you could monitor a subset of discussions. I'm going to show you first how you would monitor just one. So in the screenshots and instructions that I shared, I selected module 2. And then you can see, I can decide, do I want to know if the student has posted any threads, original, threads means original, or threads or replies to other students. This behavior will be different depending on how you set your discussion rules. If you don't allow students to see or respond to other students until they've posted an original thread, then choosing no threads will work just fine for you. If you're using the type of discussion setting where students can share or reply regardless of if they've posted first, then you might want to choose no threads or replies. If you choose no threads or replies, that means you're looking for a student who hasn't replied to another student or posted their original response. That means they really have not engaged in the discussion. Again, if you require students to post first, no threads would work for you. If we only want the agent to look for this one specific discussion, then we would click create. Before we do that, I want you to see you can also create and attach an additional one. So if you wanted to monitor every discussion in your class, you would just click create and attach again. You would again navigate down to the discussion list and choose no post authored in topic. And then you would choose a different discussion. So if I wanted to look at module 2 and module 3, I could do that this way. And now you'll see this agent is actually looking for both of those. And we're going to be able to choose, now that we've added 2, do I want all the conditions to be met, or do I want only one condition to be met? And what this means is, do I want the agent to only identify students who have not posted into both of those, or do I want the agent to tell me if they haven't posted in at least one of them? So you can see why the more criteria you start adding, the trickier it can become. I'll tell you, in my classes, I tend to actually do a different agent for each discussion. I have 6 discussions. And so I actually will change the message in the email for each discussion, because I don't want the agents to end up being just a robotic, formulaic type of message to students. I want them to pay attention to them. And so I don't want the student who maybe didn't post in module 2 and then later didn't post in module 5 to get the exact same email from me. I want to tailor my module 2 email specifically to what we're talking about in the module 2 discussion. So for the purposes of this workshop, I'm going to remove that second one. And then you'll see I'm going to say all conditions must be met, but I'm only going to have one because I've deleted the one for module 3. Then I need to decide again, what do I want the agent to do with the information now that it has it? Do I only want it to send the student a notification the first time it realizes that they haven't participated in the discussion? Or do I want it to take action every single time the student hasn't participated? If you set your schedule to run every single day, then if the student on Wednesday hasn't participated and on Thursday hasn't participated and the same on Friday, they're going to receive 3 emails that are the exact same email if you choose take action every time. In my courses, I only use the take action the first time because I'm also going to copy myself. And now I'm going to be alerted that Susan has not posted in the discussion. I don't want Susan to necessarily get that same message every single day. I'm trying to use this as a nudge, not as a bludgeon, to remind her that every single day she still hasn't participated. There may be a reason for that. And so I'm going to choose the radio button beside take action only the first time. And then again, I actually do want D2L to send this student an email. Again, I can check to make sure that the email is going to come from my name and my D2L email address. And then I'm going to choose that initiating user replacement string. And don't do what I just did and put a space between initiating and user, because it won't work. It sort of goes against your finger muscle memory to not use a space there. And then again, I'm going to blind copy myself because I want to sort of get an alert and don't do what I just did and use my MTSU address. You can see, guys, I can't talk and do this at the same time. So I'm inserting my D2L email address because I do want to receive an alert to just let me know what student may be not participating. This may not be as necessary if you're teaching a small class, But if you're teaching a class with a lot of students, it can be pretty difficult to tell unless you are really closely monitoring those discussion forums what students might be missing, and especially if you're teaching many sections. So I like to just get copied, because if there's just one student, then that's not too bad. If you start getting a ton of them, you may take yourself off of those, but I find this to be pretty helpful. And then for your subject, try to include something that's going to get the student's attention. So I typically use something like discussion 3 underway, or something like that, or reminder even, discussion 3 underway. And then for our message, you again can use that replacement string for initiating user. And then the agent is going to replace that with the student's first name. And therefore, no matter what student receives this agent, it's always going to look personalized for that student. You would type the text of your message. Again, you can choose, do you want to send an attachment? This could come in handy if the students are supposed to do some outside readings, or perhaps read an article before participating in the discussion. Attaching the article here could provide a helpful reminder to the student. I also love to use the quick link feature in the HTML editor. So if I send the student an email saying they've missed the discussion, I will always quick link the discussion right in the email, so that hopefully if the student opens that email and they're in a position that they could go ahead and try to participate, they can directly get into the discussion from the email that I'm sending them. And then we need to determine what we want our schedule to be. In my classes, I'm typically using a week-long discussion period. Again, in an accelerated course, you could potentially have shorter discussion periods. In a full-term course, you might have longer discussion periods. So this is customizable depending on your needs. When I click Update Schedule, I want this discussion, so I'm going to use my own course as an example. If I've begun the discussion on Sunday and the students have to post by Tuesday at 11:59, then I'm going to want to use a daily repeat until the end of that discussion period. Just like we did for the Welcome to Class email, I'm going to ask it to repeat this agent every single day. And then this is where noting the start time, the run time of the agent in our settings from the very beginning is going to be super important. We know that the agent is going to run at 8 o'clock. So theoretically, my students are supposed to post their original response on Tuesday. If I ask the agent to begin on Tuesday at 8:01, every student who hasn't yet posted would receive an email, even though they still have 4 hours left to make their first post. For that reason, I don't start the agent until the next day. So I would want the first day for this agent to be a Wednesday. We'll use Wednesday, March 3rd as our example. And then the last day I want to use it would be that Saturday. That's the day that the discussion ends. And in this instance, it's okay to send it at 8:01 because, again, students will have 4 hours left. So if they happen to read the email from D2L that says they still haven't posted, they'd still have 4 hours to at least do something in that discussion. They're likely not going to earn all the discussion points because they have missed the original Wednesday deadline, but they might be able to salvage some of their points and actually engage with their classmates a little bit. So then we'll click Update. And once we have finished all of those settings and we're satisfied, again, we'll do Save and Close. And then now we would have a new agent. And again, now we're in a class that already has a ton of agents, as you can see. So you're going to see what we just did is going to be mixed in with all of the other ones. This one here at the top, if we wanted to do a practice run, we could do that by clicking Practice Run. Again, D2L is going to confirm we really want to do that. And then we're going to get our confirmation that it ran. Once we click Done, you'll notice yet I haven't received the little notification in my email folder saying that the agent is completed. But if we wait just a second or two and refresh, we'll probably see that pop up there. And you can see, even though I haven't gotten the notification, it did identify somebody. So you can see it ran just now. and then it's going to identify a user. I won't click on this so we don't identify any students in my course, but you're going to see that it would have identified one user who had not posted in that discussion. Again, this would be helpful. You can see what I'm doing. I've got no discussion in the first 3 days, module 1, no discussion, module 2. And then later, I'm using one that's module 3 through 6. So for those, I might just have decided I only want the agent to send it the very first time. And you can see how this might come into play if you've got a student who habitually is participating really late. Maybe sending the student an email every single time isn't going to be all that helpful anyway. So once you start playing with agents, you can kind of decide how much or how little you want agents to interact with your students. But I do like in the very beginning of class, again, this class is only 6 weeks. So I feel like if the first 3 weeks I've identified you and told you that discussion starts and you need to post by Tuesday and you're still not doing it, then my repeated emails may not be very effective. So as you become more familiar with agents, you can decide what you would like to do for those. I'm going to stop sharing again. I'll try to remind myself to share again when we do the last one. Anybody have questions about that kind of agent where you're looking for students who maybe haven't done something? The first one, we look for students who had done something. The second agent, we're looking for students who didn't do something. Any questions about how those work or any of the steps that we did? Okay, well, we're going to look at one more agent opportunity. And so this agent is a little bit different. And this, we are looking for something. I'm going to share before I forget, share my screen with you guys. Okay, so for this one, we're actually going to look for a student who earned a score below a certain threshold on a quiz. So in this agent, we're looking for someone who did do something, but they may not have done that something as satisfactorily as we had hoped. And this is kind of a way to encourage your students if they aren't participating or they're not performing as well as you expect, and I hope that as they expect. What we're trying to do is kind of keep those students from stopping out. It can be pretty easy in an online environment. The students are pretty isolated, and if they don't feel a connection, they may not reach out for help from you. And so by giving them some encouragement, it's maybe a step to try to keep them in your course, to not let them give up too easily. So I already have this agent in my course. So instead of creating a new one from scratch, I'm just going to click edit, and we can actually follow the steps with all of the information already entered. So I have titled this agent Encouragement After a Low Quiz Grade. And in the description, you can see I'm asking the agent to look for any student who earned a grade of 69% or lower. I know that that's still passing, but for purposes of this course, which is a research prerequisite before a capstone, I'm really looking for students who still may be performing below a C. This student, the email is going to remind students that the quizzes are open book, the time frame, and how to ask questions if they need it. Again, I've enabled this agent so that it will run. I've also selected, again, only the student banner role in my class list. And just like our other agents, I am choosing, I've created and attached. We'll go through that again so you can see. I'm looking for quizzes, which are toward the bottom, and I have selected the option for score on a quiz. I'm going to choose, because I've already added quiz 3, 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to choose quiz 7. And I want to select the criteria for less than or equal to. And then in the grade field, I'm going to enter 69%. And then I'm going to click create. And you will see now, as I have slowly built this list, I have 5 different quizzes in the list. You can also see, because I have more than one, I have selected the option for any condition must be met. Because if a student earns below a 69 on any one of these quizzes, I want D2L to take action. If I said all conditions must be met, it's only going to send a message to students who scored below a 69 on all of these quizzes. So I'm choosing any condition must be met to ensure that the student receives a message as soon as one of these quizzes they earn lower than a 69%. Under repetition, because I am including multiple quizzes, I have asked D2L to send this only the first time the student's criteria is satisfied. My tips that I'm going to share with students in the email, as we'll see, are pretty much the same for all of the quizzes. So I don't feel like I need to reach out to the student every single time, but the very first time I want to give them some encouragement and some tips. So I'm choosing the first action only criteria. And then for email, again, we're using the same initiating user in the to field. I'm copying myself again, and I've given it a subject, tips for improving quiz scores. And then in my message, I'm sort of just trying to give students a little bit of an encouraging message. I noticed, again, trying to let the student know that we're paying attention to their performance, that your grade might have been lower than you might have hoped, and I want to share a couple of tips. And then I include things about the time frame that they're open notes. And then I explain to them, because sometimes I think students always feel like quizzes are busy work or discussions might be busy work. I'll try to include some rationale about why quizzes are important for them. So this particular course has a lot of really complex terminology like epistemology and ontology and things that students are probably not used to studying. And so I want them to know that these are important because later they're actually going to have to apply some of these concepts and use them in their other assignments. I remind them that there's some self-assessment practice activities that I've embedded in the course through Quizlet so that they can help if they want to do flashcards or fill in the blank exercises or a self-test. They can do that before they ever even take the quiz in D2L. And that if they employ these strategies, they will probably do better next time than they did this time. And then asking them to let me know if they have questions. I have not elected to attach anything to this message. So the last thing that I did is I scheduled it. So I click the option for use schedule. And then when I update schedule, because I have chosen 5 different quizzes in this option, I'm going to need this date, stop and start date, to cover a much wider range of available days. So I've had this start the very first day of class in this example, and then I've had it end the day that that last quiz that I chose is due. And then I would click update, and then I would click save and close. I'm not going to now since this is an agent that I'm already using. But then you could see again, we could do a practice run, we could click, and then we can get our done. We can now see that we did get a notification for our last one, which is our discussion one. So we had the welcome to class agent, and then the discussion agent practice runs were completed. Now, if we refresh, you can see in the encouragement after a low quiz, we did a new run and this time updated. So before it was a time in February, now you can see that it just ran because we did the practice run. So I'll stop sharing again. I know that is a lot to cram into an hour, but I hope those give you some ideas about possible ways to use D2L agents. I'm going to share with you, I'll send it to the LT and ITC. I will share the document that you have access to, but also another document that includes sort of a cheat sheet of the replacement strings that you can use in D2L, as well as a lot of other templates for agents that D2L has provided for other different use cases in your course. So again, you wouldn't have to necessarily create those from scratch. You could follow their templates, and they wouldn't have screenshots from our D2L instance, but it would be something to get you started. Does anybody have questions? I've talked for a long time, so now I'm happy to hear your thoughts, questions, concerns. Are you going to use these? Do they seem doable or helpful to you in your classes?
Hey, my connection is unstable, so you don't get to see me in all of my t-shirt glory. These are going to change the way I conduct my classes. I teach 5 sections of 30 students. This is going to be so much easier on me keeping up with students who are falling behind. This is going to be life-changing. And you explained it so well. I couldn't,
Well,
I'm really good with software and I was trying to do it on my own. And knowing the replacement strings, it's just going to transform my classes. I'm going to be a phoenix.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I do. I mean, I feel like I'm good with technology too. And I'll tell you, the first times I did it, I made some mistakes. I sent agents to people I didn't want to send them to. I didn't send agents to people I did want to send them to. So I'm trying to include, some of that like helpful advice about look for the time the agent's going to run. But once you get used to using them and you set them up, it does take a little bit of time. But it is amazing how much it does help just for you. It is hard to monitor 5 classes of 30 students and to constantly be engaged with those learners. And so I often have students reply to that email that the agent sent because it is replying to my D2L address. And, sometimes it's a lot of, I just forgot, thanks for reaching out, or I've had a really tough week and I'm going to actually be late. So sometimes it just helps them feel like I'm connected and I'm interested and I'm concerned, and they will reciprocate by contacting me back. And that can get that conversation started. Whereas before I started using the agents, it was just up to me to be able to tell who was and who wasn't participating. And sometimes that's hard. Even if you're engaged in the discussion, it's still hard to figure out who might not be participating out of a group of 30 people. So I hope that you'll report back and, let us know when you start using them, if you're feeling like they're as satisfying to use as I have found them to be.
Layne.
Hey, Becky.
Becky. This is wonderful. My question has to do with moving from semester to semester. I presume all you have to do then is go back and change your dates.
That's exactly right. As long as when you import copy components, as long as you make sure that the agents are part of that, everything will copy over and you have to change those dates. I will say I have found sometimes you have to redo the release conditions. So it may not have the quizzes in there anymore, even though it says, low quiz grade. I've had to reattach the quizzes, but that process is pretty quick. But everything else will be there. All of the email text, all of the other settings will stay.
Thank you.
Other questions, concerns?
Actually, comment.
Sure.
Well, I have talked to you before, Layne, about doing this. And what I found is particularly for online students, they say the instructor doesn't exist. And by using these intelligent agents, they feel like I'm talking to them every single day. And so it totally changes the relationship with your students, especially online, where they feel
That's
like
a good point, Deborah.
So.
And I'll say that Tara and I worked with another faculty member who was trying them, and she reported back and said it was going so well. So I just encourage you to give it a shot. I mean, my contact information is in the document. I'm always happy to talk to you about things if you're trying to set them up or if you are using them and they're not exactly going the way that you had hoped. Please reach out and I'll at least commiserate with you and try to see if we can figure out a way to solve the problem if there is a problem, or think about other ways that you could actually maybe go about it. Well, it's 2:00. I still have plenty of time. So if anybody wants to stay and has individual questions, I'm happy to do that. I really appreciate you coming and asking questions and being engaged. I appreciate Kim very much for monitoring the chat. She's a superstar. Thank you very much. And then I will send the information to the LT and ITC with the intelligent agent replacement strings and the other templates, so that if you're interested in looking at other kinds of agents, you'll have those as well. And it also has some resources from D2L workshops. They have a great Intelligent Agent 101 and 201 workshop where Barry Dahl just walks you through, again, how to do some agents. I found those really helpful. Each of them are about an hour. And so those will be linked in the resources as well. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'll hang around for a bit in case you have questions. I hope you can enjoy some sunshine, get outside today.